Tonight, I'll be narrating Kinda Thing by Saturdead. It swung outward. I breathed a sigh of relief. Then again, why was I relieved? What was I expecting? There was no world in which that door wouldn't open, so what was the big deal? I decided I wouldn't let myself be tricked by uncertainty. I closed the door and opened it again. Then I did it again. Then I did it a third time, but with a little celebratory twirl. As I came around, I noticed something on the coffee table. The frog was definitely smoking a cigar. I stopped mid-twirl and looked a little closer. That wasn't right. I'd written cigar, crossed it out, written cigarette, and now it was certainly a cigar again. I picked it up and held it to the light. Definitely a cigar, no question about it. In every conceivable angle. I tried to get a reference point, like how the cigar was as thick as its froggy fingers. A cigarette wouldn't be like that. That was something I could rely on. A measurement, not a casual observation. I put it down and stepped back, looking at the table as a whole. Without perceiving every single item individually, there were things I didn't recognize. I couldn't put my finger on what it was, but I knew something looked different. Or maybe not even looked. It felt different. For the first time, I considered that maybe kinda things weren't just a thought experiment. Maybe there really was something to them. Maybe the items at the fringe of our lives do possess some quality that we don't perceive until we sit down and look. And if that was the case, what might happen if you put 36 of them in a single room and closed the door? Hold on. I didn't close the door. It was open last time I checked. I paused for a moment, taking a deep breath. I was spiraling for no reason, working myself up over nothing, like staring at a still picture, thinking there's a ghost in it. These weren't ghosts or creepy crawlies. They were just little things left by the roadside, figuratively and literally. I picked up the first thing I spotted and held it up. A little glass snail. It lost one of its eye stalks. I looked to my reference sheet to confirm which eye it was, only to realize the snail wasn't on the sheet to begin with. Had I missed it? At that point, I stopped. I flicked the snail across the room, grasped my head, and said no, out loud. I needed to hear the word to ground myself. I was making things up. I had to be. I decided to call it a night, leaving it all on the table for now. I shook my head and turned to the window, grasping for the curtains as I checked my phone. It was getting close to 11 p.m. There were no curtains. Looking up, I realized I was standing at the wrong end of the room. The window was to the right, and there were no curtains. I had been so certain just a second ago, but my hand just tapped against the eggshell wallpaper. I was getting confused. Turning back around, I noticed two things. One, that the door was slightly more to the right than I thought it would be, and that the coffee table was up against the leftmost wall. It's like I turned the wrong way. My eyes briefly crossed over and I saw double. I shook my head again, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. I tried telling myself it was conditioning. I had been thinking about uncertainty all day, and I was tricking myself into a pattern of thought. I headed for the door, turned the handle, and pushed outward. Again, nothing. This didn't make sense. I knew it opened outward, and I refused to believe otherwise. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong, and I had to accept that this was not normal. Over the next few minutes, it felt like everything changed every time I looked away. The window felt smaller. The door had the handle on the wrong side. The coffee table was up against the leftmost wall, then the right. The wallpaper was eggshell, then got a slight hint of maroon. The floor was imitation wood, then a textureless brown plastic. I pulled on the door a couple of times, but it didn't open either way. I turned to open the window, but it was gone. I could feel a cold sweat coming on. I wasn't imagining this. It wasn't a misunderstanding. I knew what was out there, and I knew I looked out that window dozens of times. I backed away and put my hand on the light switch. I flicked it off and on again. A couple of things changed. A few things seemed to have moved. One of the closet doors was open. I flicked the light again, faster this time. The table was slightly angled. The window was still gone. I reached for the light switch again, but it was higher up than before. I flicked it off and back on again. But the light did not come back on. I fumbled around in the dark. I could feel myself stepping on things that weren't supposed to be there. I stubbed my toe against the coffee table in the middle of the room. I fumbled with my hands along all four walls of the room, but I couldn't find the door. I couldn't find the closet. After a while, I couldn't even find the coffee table. I tried lying down flat and spreading out my arms, hoping to touch pretty much whatever. After a couple of tries, I couldn't even find my way back to the wall. It was just me and this impressionless void. It didn't make sense to me. I knew exactly where things were supposed to be. I knew what I was supposed to be looking at, but that didn't matter. I brought out my phone and turned on the flashlight. I didn't have a lot of battery, but it would have to do. I could see my own hands, but nothing else. It was just this intense darkness where not even moonlight could reach. I got down on my knees and touched the floor. This textureless, neutral floor. Not cold or warm, just a solid matte black. The light didn't reflect off of it. I walked around. At times, I would bump into a wall, but when I turned, the way forward was wide open. I tried jumping a couple of times, but my feet didn't make a sound. I tried calling out, but there was no echo, not even reverb. It was such a strange sensation that it hurt to comprehend. I ran and crawled and jumped and rolled. There was just nothing. Nothing. And when I screamed, I couldn't hear it outside my head. It felt like I was inside a cube. Not a room, but like a big, dark cube. It's as if the kind of things had made everything so uncertain that I slipped between the cracks, ending up in some place in between. If I tripped or fell, I could feel myself rolling off the floor and landing on what was previously a wall, making me think every angle was made to be uncertain, designed to change. After a while, I just started walking forward. I walked and walked and walked, but never hit a wall. 10 minutes, still no wall. My heart was pounding out of my chest, and I could taste salt on my tongue. Without anything outside yourself, you start to notice details you would otherwise ignore, like how you breathe or how your heart sounds as it beats. You could hear the tendons stretch in your legs with every step, and you start to question, why? I tried to fixate on things I knew for certain. My name, my parents, the name of my childhood friends. But even in that circle of grounding, there was doubt. What color were my mother's eyes really? And that damn teddy bear keychain, what did it really look like? That seemed to shift something. There was a flash, like a light post, going past the speeding car. That was something. Reaction. Maybe the kind of things, if they got me lost, could also help me find a way back. I thought about that teddy bear keychain. I tried to imagine myself on that first drunken morning, picking it up from the fence behind my family home. I remembered turning it over in my hands, looking at the colors and patterns. But in that thought, there was nothing there. Just this swirling pattern of black and white, like the static between TV channels. Thinking about it tickled my hands, making my brain feel like it needed to discard the memory like an unpleasant sneeze. I brought the memory back farther. I thought about that night on the couch with that curly-haired girl. That night when I first heard about the kind of things. Who had she been? We'd talked all night. We'd made out, but I couldn't remember her name. Did I ever see her again? And there were a couple of things that didn't add up. Had she known anyone at the party? Why was she the only girl there? Why didn't we exchange numbers? My thoughts spiraled as I started to question every step along my path. You are what you do, and if all you've done can be called into question, you start to feel like nothing. I fell to my knees. It didn't hurt. Nothing hurt. It was like floating in a world that forgot to pull you down. I would sometimes find myself inches above the ground, having to stretch my toes down just to feel something solid. After a while, I lost that too. But I kept my mind on that teddy bear. I pushed past the fractal images I'd built in my mind. The red, the blue, the gray, the black, the lime and mango eyes. If you looked past all of it, there were certainties that never changed. It had 2 eyes, 2 legs, 2 arms, and a heart on its chest. That was always there. That was certain. I repeated it like a mantra. 2 eyes, 2 legs, 2 arms, and a heart. 2 eyes, 2 legs, 2 arms, and a heart. Something was happening. The ground came back. There was a light. Were they distant lamps, pieces of wallpaper, or lonely stars? It was a night sky. I recognized some of the constellations. I spun around, pointing out patterns I recognized. I spun on my heel, excited to feel something solid beneath me. 2 eyes, 2 legs, 2 arms, and a heart. As I came around the second spin, my entire field of view was absorbed. Something astronomically large, impossibly large. A planet-sized eye, so unfathomable that it couldn't be considered a thing or a place. It just was. An eye. The word rattled in my mind like a panicked bird in a cage, screaming at me over and over. An eye. It was an eye. It repeated to the point where it turned from thing to word to noise. An eye, an eye, an eye, an eye, an eye. I shut my eyes and imagined the teddy bear keyring in my hands. I imagined the texture. I decided I would have to commit to a truth that I knew to be true. I had to force myself to be certain. I decided it was blue with red details. That's how I remembered it from the first night, and that's what it had to be. Blue with red details and lemon eyes. Looking up, I could see dozens of coffee tables in random patterns, all covered in teddy bear keychains of various shapes and patterns and colors. All the while, something so large that the universe itself looked like the dark of its eye bore down on me from every angle. It didn't need to say anything. I knew what had to be done. It wanted a choice, a certainty. I had to show it the right kind of thing. I have no idea how long I wandered that void, poking and prodding at those little keychains. One was darker blue with yellow lining. One was almost green. Every color combination imaginable, in every angle. The eye was patient. I had to be right. I don't know how long it took me, but I found myself holding something. I held it up and looked at it. I knew it was the right one before I even noticed the colors. Maybe it became the right one just by believing it to be. That's when it hit me. It didn't matter. The original color was gone. There was no point in trying to restore an idea or thought that had passed from memory. I decided then and there that I would make this something it had never been. I rolled the keychain between my fingers and opened my eyes. My hand was on the wall as the lights flicked back on. I was covered in sweat. All the items from the Kinda Things box were still neatly lined up on the coffee table. Even the frog with the cigarette. The mint green walls were there. The window, the curtains, the closet. And when my shaking hand touched the door handle, it effortlessly swung outward. I cried with relief and crawled out, ending up in the hallway, clutching my teddy bear keychain. The next day, the whole box of items went straight in the trash. I stopped talking about the kind of things in my lectures. I made up this other thing about humpback whales and their patterns, but it wasn't nearly as effective. People like talking about their own kind of things, and their own ideas relating to it. I still hear people talking about it on campus to this day, despite not mentioning it for about 3 years. I have photographed and documented everything about that teddy bear 100 times over, and it hasn't changed since. I know it better than the color of my mother's eyes. It's my one anchor binding me to this place. I could never go without it. I still get uncertain sometimes. I think when you cluster so many kind of things, it triggers a kind of chain reaction. If you have just the one, I don't think they do that much. You might just make the occasional mistake when trying to remember them. I think what I went through was a result of a cluster impression over a prolonged period of time. I don't ask people that strange question anymore. I don't want to invite them into something they can't prepare for. But if you were to look for a kind of thing on your own, do so in a way that destroys it. Photograph it. Keep it close. Remember it. If you keep it in the periphery, it may just drag you out there with it. I've heard so many ideas on what they are and why they function this way. Some say that it's demons touching things that we forget to care for. Others say that it's ghostly possession. I heard one student claiming they are lost souls, looking for solace in places they won't be disturbed. I don't know. I don't think anyone will ever know for sure. It's the nature of kinda things to never truly be known. But as long as I have that one thing to keep me grounded, I'll be fine. Maybe there'll be the occasional kind of thing in my life going forward, but at least I will know not to collect them. For now, I'll keep my keychain close and to look at things I know for certain. 2 eyes, 2 legs, 2 arms, and a heart. My all-red teddy bear keychain with coal black eyes.
Some stories end when the words stop. Others don't end at all. If you enjoyed this story, there are many more waiting in the dark. Until next time.